that I'm going to. Yeah, right. Yes, I agree. So let us start from the beginning. And the beginning is usually the very obvious thing, namely that people are amazing. People are amazing. Midwayers are amazing people. And Miriam is an amazing midwayer because, yes, because being a very accomplished digital medium designer and getting involved in many, many things related to bio research and the very high level of contemporary intellectual approaches, creating some stuff for them, and getting involved with many things, including creation of 3D animation, she came to value the artistic possibilities of those contemporary applications. And what was amazed me when I first found it on her website, when I just got myself introduced to Miriam's persona this way, I found out that Miriam fell in love with drawing with His Majesty graphite pencil. And this love affair is quite a serious one. So the 21st century digital design of last word of that and desenio drawing revealed so much in proto-Renaissance and then later in all many cultural developments of using so very amazingly nicely in Miriam's art that we are going to hear and to see and to watch and to learn about it. All right, Miriam, take it on.
Thank you, Olga. So I thank you and Mario and Hannah for helping me too and taking all these photos for the poster. So I guess I'll go ahead and share my computer screen. And you should still be able to hear me, right?
Of course.
Okay, perfect. So what I thought I start is just by showing you simulation, and this is done in a game engine in Unreal, and what you're seeing in the background is all digital painting, and I'll go more back into it. So I think of myself as an artist scientist, and I'll give you a little bit of background on how this came about. So I was born in Ecuador, so this was my family, and like any small town here, we live in a small town in Ecuador, and we did all the things that were fun for kids, beach and parties and rivers. And I love this one because it's a clip that shows how mischievous and happy I was. But then we moved to a larger city, and so I call this the moves. And it's interesting, I found this quote from Tim Burton, which I liked a lot, that when you've had an experience of this feeling of loneliness, because when I moved to the city, we didn't quite fit, right? We came from being in nature, and then we were in a city that was kind of restricting, and you build this feeling, and it makes you feel a little like an outsider, and it never leaves you. But it's interesting because later in life it becomes so familiar. So I like actually being an outsider in places because I'm so familiar with that feeling of not entirely feeling part of something. And so a way for me to cope with this move was to turn inward, and that was drawing. And these drawings are not as early as I would like to show you because I couldn't reach those drawings, but these were a lot of drawings I was doing while I was, I moved here and experimenting with watercolors. But I turned my attention basically towards science instead of art. Art was something that I just did on the side, and I had that ability, but I didn't pursue it. And within science, I didn't get to use a lot of my art skills, except in some times where it was more practical. The art had to communicate something very functional. So I worked in molecules, and this is a mechanism, transcription termination, and this is an animation I did for a talk, and you can see how basic it is. And even though it was so basic, I used it in a talk for millions of 500 people, and they were amazed at the animation. And I thought, if we could, even then, back then, I thought if we could use better visuals, it would be fantastic, right? And for the public, this is actually too basic. How can you imagine having those figures, those basic forms inside of you? So that led me to start thinking how to communicate science in a better way. Later on, I was a scientific editor, and the art that I got to do was a scientific editor was to help out with covers. So sometimes the authors did not provide a cover, or we were short of the person that usually freelance, and I had to step in. And I really like this one because it was basically this is basically a picture, several pictures collaged together, but it's yeast cells. So the author gave me a couple pictures. One was this yeast cells on a petri dish, and then a picture of a gel. And so I, based on the work that she was doing, I gleaned that she was working in aging, something related to aging in a very basic way, though, in using yeast. And so the idea I had was to make the yeast resemble grapes, because we have that association of grapes and wine and prolonging aging. So that was the cover that I came up, and the author was very pleased with it. Like I said, I got to design some other covers. This was designed with a friend who was a graphic designer and a scientist. And when I looked at these molecules, what I noticed is that if you look at the pairs, it almost looks like there's a dance going on, right? At first they start apart, and then one molecule is like flirting with the other one, and then they are sort of in a dance. And then at the end, they meet, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was another cover we designed for this journal. These are two other covers. They were done very quickly, so I'll go into one of them later on, because when I saw it, it looked to me like skier. So I put it in a montage. I had like maybe 30 minutes, 1 hour to come up with a concept and do it. But as you can tell, I was always juggling this. I have art, I have science, and art was something I did on this side, and science was where I spent most of my time. But I came to, in 2015, to the conclusion that I wanted to spend more time doing art, that I was, there's something that I wanted to explore more. So I took time just to do art. And my first project, just in terms of art, was called a children's book. And so the name of it was The Jungle Dream. And it's a collage with watercolor figures put together. And it's the story actually of I read the story of my grandma's family, who had been, her dad had been motivated to take them from the city that they lived in Ecuador to the jungle, because they were colonizing, and there were opportunities for rubber exploitation or other things people did that, not just here in the US, but everywhere. They do that everywhere else. So he moved his entire family to the rainforest. So I thought that was an amazing story. And I made it into a children's book. And so how I detail how part of it is fictional, how they meet these natives, and they build their home. And that was the first animation that I did based on the book, and it was just not really knowing anything about software, just using Photoshop, and teaching myself how to do this 2D animation with the figures that I had drawn for the book. That told me I really enjoyed this process of moving and working with aspects of animation. And so as part of this time, this period, I also, again, going back to drawing, I experimented with coloring, and so coloring books, and I designed a few of them, and I held a few events in Cambridge. So I used to live in Cambridge, and I got a grant for running these events, and I also was in a program called the Community Supported Arts Program, which is a program from the city of Cambridge, where they were part of the first cohort, a group of artists, and they commissioned from us a piece of artwork. And then patrons got to buy shares. So they would combine from the work from these artists in a share, and the patrons would buy shares. It was very successful, and they continued for a few years with other artists. And my design was a poster about Cambridge. And so I had taken photos throughout Cambridge and done a lot of drawings for the poster. And so it was an extension of it for me, was to just use the figures in another coloring book. And this one I matched with information about Cambridge. So I did a lot of research about this city, its architecture through the years, and this book came about. And I sold it in bookstores around Cambridge. And I also participated, this is part of another book, more coloring events, and these are in workspaces. And I also participated in fairs around Cambridge and Boston. And I also collaborated with poets and also with therapists to combine the coloring with another activity. So in this case, Alan Feldman is reading his poetry, and people color at the same time. And it was a very meditative activity, and people really enjoy it. And I wish I had done more, but at the time I was thinking, what can I do to move forward in my artwork? How can I combine it with science? And so, like I said, I participated in many fairs, and my poster was shown in the Cambridge Galleria. And it actually, it culminated this period of coloring with a commission from Harvard. They had seen my work in one of these fairs, and they asked me if I could make a coloring book for an anniversary. So I worked with them to produce a coloring book for Harvard, which was fun. Another highlight of that period was this hotel in Cambridge, in northern Cambridge, looked at my artwork, and they liked it, and they wanted to use it to wrap a van of the hotel. And so this is a boutique hotel called the Freepoint Hotel, and it had my illustration wrapped around it. And every time somebody saw it would go around, people would be like, "Oh, we saw your van. It's nearly books around Cambridge." So that was fun. This is just another coloring. I'm trying to use now these posters that I have from these events in collaborating with another artist, because it's a community-made poster. So it has input from lots of people. And I participated also in art open studios. And this was the cohort of women that were part of this art group in Cambridge that was selected. This is in my studio, also experimenting. I experimented with printing And these are some of the prints I did. Again, taking advantage of the illustrations and then using them in lino cuts and combining colors. So it's all experimental and all about Cambridge. I also love birds, so that was part of it. So now it was clear. Okay, I was trying to balance it, and I had put more weight into the art, but they were still separate activities, right? Art over here, science over there, and in an effort to bring them together, I thought, well, animation might allow me to do that, and so I turned into learning, and I spent a year, 2 years, 6 months in Vancouver, in the Vancouver Film School, and a year and a half at Noman in Los Angeles, which is a school very well known to the entertainment industry. And so the idea I had was to learn from people that are experts in giving us these wonderful visualizations of science fiction and use them to represent science. And so the work that I did there was all experimenting with using molecules that are real, and this is supposed to be a synapse, and it's a close-up of the synapse, and the molecules that you see here are true to life, meaning that they were determined experimentally through crystallography and other experiments. Science determined the shapes of proteins, and then they put the coordinates in a data bank, which is called the Protein Data Bank. So these files exist, they're called PBDs, and anybody can access them because it's free, but it's very hard to manipulate because the coordinates of the proteins are huge. But I learned how to manipulate it and create a 3D model, create 3D models from these files. And so the fibers that you see here are the true shapes that you would see in our own cells. And so the colors that I chose for this are black and white, because what I tried to imitate was an electron microscopy image, which are always in black and white. And it was actually, I visualized it in VR, and it was pretty amazing. I really enjoy the process. This is another simulation on a 3D environment that I created. And what you're seeing is a neuron, and this is a model according to a true neuron that was determined experimentally. And the neuron belongs to neurons that are found in the retina. And so they're in the retina, when the light hits, then it goes through layers of neurons. So if you see here, this is one layer, but there are other layers underneath. And so when it's my representation, how it would work, the light hits and you see it traveling through the neurons. And this is the same layers. You're not seeing the top one as you saw in the previous image, but you're seeing other of the neurons in this retina network. And so the light would go through them. And then there's a signal that gets, is generated, and then it goes to the brain and tells it how to interpret the light. And this is done in Maya. So basically, I was learning how to use all these different software to represent scientific topics. I learned a lot of modeling as well, and this is a 3D model actually, but looks like a render, like an illustration. And this is just another modeling scene done in Maya and Unreal. And this is a little character that I'm still in the works. It's from another children's book I wrote, but it has been in the drawer for a while because I got some comments from the editor that needed major work, and I thought, okay, it goes in the drawer for now. And so this little fellow, it's a little black sheep, and he has a lot of me. And here I'm going to show you, hopefully it's not too loud. Let me see if I can lower, hold on. I don't want it to be too loud. This is a demo reel and it's different clips. This one you have already seen. This one is a red blood vessel, and you see the red blood cells coming at you, and this is a view from the side in the walls that would have some fibers. And it's all done in 3D and then render in Unreal Engine. This is another shot of that synapse, and you can see the molecules and the fibers and the actin and the receptors at the edge. This is supposed to be the inside of a molecular of a cell. And so what you're seeing is the nucleus, and you're seeing then the plasmic reticulum and the fibers that exist, the tubulins, and then mitochondria. And this is a viral particle. And so the pores that you see here are true to nature. That's how nuclear pores are. I'm not sure about the exact shape, but that's where I take some artistic freedom to model the shape based on photographs. And this was my representation of the COVID, and how it opens, and then you see the RNA in the middle. This is a true neuron, and this was just me playing with a simulation on these true to life neurons that I obtained in collaboration with a lab in Princeton. And these are neurons that I model according to those neurons to represent the retina. As I had mentioned, it's supposed to show how the light travels through the different layers of neurons and how the signal then comes and goes into the brain. And so that was work that I did at this school called Nomen. It was fantastic. The instructors that were there were just magicians. They worked for Disney and Sony and all these places. So it was an amazing learning experience. And then came the COVID. And so there was just this period of going inward for myself. I had finished my classes, so there came a move again and back to Boston. And so once again, I think sometimes what you experience as a child, experiences repeat themselves. And so I turned into drawing. I was, again, I took classes for illustration and drawing, but this is something that gave me peace. And I turned myself into something that was more manual rather than computer. And so this was the period since I moved back to Boston that I've been involved on just, getting back to drawing and illustration. And the program that I'm involved, that I'm signed up for, and I like this one because it was an illustration that was supposed to depict important aspects of our lives. And so in the one, I picked my relationship with my grandmother and the things that made me remember her. And one of them is how she used to teach me when we used to live in this small town in Ecuador. It was in the coastal areas. It was very warm, and there were these huge cockroaches, and we actually were afraid of them. And my grandma taught us not to fear them and to actually dissect them. She was a teacher, and that's probably where my love for learning and science comes from. She was always an avid reader and just always was reading something. If it wasn't the newspaper, it was some book. So it was wonderful. And then these are images related to my daughter, and when she graduated, was an amazing moment, and the science that went along on the side. Well, I was being a mom as well, and so it was I like that illustration. And then also in this period, I discovered gouache. And I loved it. I think I've been experimenting, just learning. Right now, it's very realistic. It's just learning the technique and using it, experimenting with it. This is a monochromatic painting I did, and then also collage. And these are all wonderful classes I've been taking at RISD. And because of the pandemic, I was able to take them online. And now these represent my coming out of depression. Because in this period where I was, painting and drawing was a relief, but I was in a dark period. And I think sometimes, with the pandemic or being by ourselves, we go into these periods of going inward. And that was what this period was for me. And so after a retreat, I've been slowly, coming out with therapy. And also this retreat was wonderful in Jamaica. And this was one of my, it was a retreat for therapy. And so this was one of the therapists in the retreat, and she was an angel. And so now I'm thinking, okay, that was a long period that I was depressed, right? It was about a year. How can I use this experience of depression in some useful way? And so one way I'm doing that is I started working on a storyboard about how it feels to be depressed, but I also wanted to be useful. So I connected with somebody at MGH, who's a psychiatrist and a researcher in psychedelics. And he's helping me with the bring that scientific part, what are symptoms, what is considered depression, and how, treatment, so that we put them in some kind of a story for people to use it for information. Because I think that from what I read, depression affected many of us, and it was actually an epidemic. And especially in teenagers, the suicide rate has increased phenomenally. And I think the more we learn about mental illness, the kinder we are to each other, and also the more people that are depressed can do for themselves. So anyhow, this is the development of the character, and this was in wash, but I took inspiration from these artists, Os Gemels, that I love. My daughter loves too, and this is one of my favorite artists as well. And so came up with this 3D character. She's almost, I'm pretty happy the way she looks, but she could be refined more over time. And then I've been trying to work with animation and animate her. And I just did these animations for this, but the backgrounds are going to change. It's a very basic pre-visualization, just basically for the animation. And it's showing you what the storyboard showed you, right? She starts being kind of happy, right? There's light, she's outside. And then and so then COVID comes, and then at the beginning we try to cope with, we're indoors and we're coping with it, and we're trying to reach out and stay connected through technology, through the phone, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So this is going to be accompanied, if you saw in the illustration, it's accompanied by these walls coming down, because every time she talks and it doesn't connect entirely, there's a wall that comes. And when you're depressed, you tend to feel like your perspective has changed and you're enclosed in a very small space, even though you're not, but that's how it feels. So it's supposed to transmit that. So the background is going to change. This is just to focus on the animations. The other thing that I'm working on is an exhibition about depression and psychedelics, and it's about getting information out to the public. I think it has incredible potential, and so I'm teaming for this with this scientist from Mass General Hospital that I mentioned. He's a young scientist that is, like I said, a psychiatrist, and he also has a PhD in the art of science. And so he has this other perspective where he's studied art, how it's used to represent mental illness. And so he was very excited to do this with me. And another artist friend who is in Cambridge, her name is Tamar Ettingen, and with whom we're combining my previous artwork from Cambridge and with her art. And so we're probably going to make something for this exhibit, but we're also finding artists that will fit in this exhibit. And so the three parts that we think would be perfect for this exhibition are one section that deals with depression, and think about Picasso's Blue Period, and what those paintings that express this feeling of sadness and being blue. And another section that deals with psychedelic art, and hopefully we can do this as a projection into the wall so that it's a little bit, gives you an immersive feeling. And these are everything you imagine about psychedelic art, all the colors and the mandalas and everything. And we have one artist that fits perfect in this, but we're going to be looking for more artwork, of course. And then the third part is coming out of it. So if you've been depressed and you've tried these new treatments and you come out, it's like life has color again. And so nature, the art in this part would be nature inspired, but full of color, full of life. And we'll have, information about psychedelics. And maybe I asked for a grant. Maybe we will include as well a seminar, a lecture. So what else I'm doing in terms of the biovisualization? I imagine, I have a mistake there. Remember, I told you in this cover, I had experimented with taking molecules that look to me to be skiing. So I was assigning human characteristics and advising these molecules, just like any other animator does in Pixar or Disney, right? We see these objects that have human characteristics. So why not give my proteins human characteristics as well? So I am playing, this was another experiment where I looked at this molecule and it looked to me to be like a porcupine. Unfortunately, the authors didn't like it so much, so it didn't get published, but I thought it was lovely. Anyhow, this is a molecule where I have animated it to look like it's walking. So it's an experiment to see how, this goes. And this is a basic visualization. I would have to fill it out with more molecules, but it was just to show this would be the character here. And he would explain what it does. And that goes along with the picture in my poster. And so I wanted to have these molecules around. So that molecule is this one, and it's ACE2, and it's the receptor that we have in certain cells that allows for the for the cell to internalize the COVID virus. So I took the molecule and 3D printed it, and this one is already interacting with the little parts of the COVID here. So you can see, I don't know if you can see, but the receptor is there. It's interacting with another protein, and then these little parts belong to COVID, the spike protein, and the spike protein looks like this. This is the culprit of all our troubles for the last 2 years. And so this animation would explain from the perspective of ACE2, the receptor, what it normally does, what happened, it allowed it in, the interaction, how that came about. And it's a different way for people to maybe be interested in the story. I think we're far enough that I can experiment with it. And not make it funny, but make it educational. And the other project that I hope to get back to is my children's book. And that's based, this is another representation of the Black Little Sheep that I show you. It's a digital painting, and it's 2D, but it has the same theme. And I hope to work on that book now that I'm far enough from the comments to go back and look at it. And here I have the description of the exhibition again, because I know there may be artists and I'm among you that might be interested in this, participating in this exhibit, and we would love to see your artwork and see if we can include it. And I will be putting out emails out there to see if we can get some interest. And we have so far commissioned 2 artists. One is in the psychedelic art, and he's worked with, is making these beautiful mandalas in these colorful paintings that fit very well with psychedelic art. And there's another artist from the South End that does this beautiful work with, his paintings are full of color and of life. So I think it would be a perfect fit for number 3, the 3rd section. But if you're interested, email me. I will be sending emails about this. Yes, so that was my presentation. Love to hear if you have any questions.
That was more amazing than I was expecting, Miriam.
Oh, thank
I
you.
love those roaming around moleculars, which are looking like roaming trees, the trees with legs, or whatever beings with legs. I just love how it goes, and I hope that you will make more of those and you will show it to us, because we actually can show some kind of these things. We have screens, we have projectors, and we have children in this building who would be so happy to use your inventions and books and everything. And I don't know if you've noticed, but one of our listeners and spectators, Liliana, wrote here that she would love to participate in your project.
On the exhibit. Oh, that would be wonderful. Let me see how I can exit the stop share. Okay.
All right. Now we all are here. Now tell us, what are you going to do next, except of those long shooting to the future projects?
Well, so it's between the book right now, doing I really would like at least the pilot of the protein shot that is good enough to show, and the depression animation, at least a few of those, because they're small clips to either show what it feels like to be depressed, or also show symptoms of depression. So you can't get out of bed because you're so tired. So that would be represented by that character as well. And then I'm interested in playing with the idea of pursuing an MFA as well, as a law resident MFA, and we'll see about that, because I will be finishing the certificate and then starting, but I love learning. So I like the idea of always have some learning on the side that I do while I continue to pursue projects that have the potential to generate income. But that also are from my own content. I realize then I have a little bit more control. I would love to. I'm also talking to one of my previous instructors about the possibility of participating in a script that he has for a story that is completely unrelated to science. It's a story about the Jewish story around World War II in Bulgaria. And so it has that historical perspective that maybe hasn't been told. And we would be using animation, so characters that have human shape and form, but are animated.
So,
So
it is planned like an animation film,
yes, it
more or
would be
less,
an
right?
animation film. And the idea, what I am attracted about that project is that I would be working under this instructor who has an immense amount of experience in film.
Mhm.
And so I think I still would like to learn more about film. That's why I'm also considering an MFA, because at first I thought, okay, I'll take this time to learn how the techniques to do, these animations, but there's more to it, right? There's learning about lighting and where the cameras go. There's so much that it's learned through experience.
That is
And
so very
yeah.
true. And also, the stance that I heard many years ago when the fashionability of computer and video game just started picking up. It was said that in the beginning, in the foundation of every single game or video game is sitting an artist with a pencil.
Yeah, that is true. Drawing and illustration is the basics for everything, but there's so much more.
That is
art,
also true.
yeah, color theory, and just learning about light, how it, where you place your lights, because you have that freedom when you're creating these 3D sets to place the lights wherever you want to accentuate your character, and then where does the camera go, right? Yeah, composition is very important.
Of course, yes. And before this unpleasantness with quarantine and COVID came to be, we used to have periodical demonstrations of movies and videos and creations of those people who live here, because we had a big screen and we had to have, and we did have, and I hope that we still have projectors and those people who are willing to spend their time to help to facilitate that action. And we would come together. It was in the art of the under the stairs in previous times. Now it can be at some other place within the gallery. So we just can schedule to screen what you are creating and to share with us, not only with some other noble institution, but right here.
Yeah.
At Midway.
Yeah, because feedback
we can become your experimental field.
Yes, feedback is so important, right? I mean, you need to know as you're creating, as the hair, the look right, like, does
Yes.
it show what I'm trying to express?
Exactly. Yeah. You look at the people whom you already know more or less. Some people are not that familiar. It's also very important. You're watching the reaction. You see how they look at it, and you use the experience, and the experiment is quite double-sided. They enjoy what's coming up, especially because they know you more or less, and after our session, they will know you better, because not only those who are present at the moment, but also those who come and see that recording on the YouTube channel of this art talk will know you better. So just use an opportunity to try your hands on us.
I would, for sure. I say yes. I would take that opportunity if we have that, we establish that again. I would love to participate for sure. Yes.
That would be cool. That would be cool. And the kids would love it. The kids just have the time of their life when they're allowed, especially, to contribute to those things.
Yes, and even I think not just for the bio visualization, but even for the book. because one of the
Yeah.
things I want to know, it's talking about a little black sheep, but it's based on our perception. And I think this goes through, it's not just limited to American culture. I remember knowing about the little black sheep, black sheep, how you call somebody in the family black sheep. I think every culture has that, and
we all
it
have it.
predates. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with literally
With
a
being
mutation
different.
and being different in a group.
Being different.
Right.
Really. Having seeing how cute your little black sheep is, it's already buying our love. So
Oh, cool.
that's really looking like a very good possibility, and in the near future. Not necessarily we have to wait until all the restrictions are lifted. We can arrange the event the way that we have it safely and pleasantly for everyone, and useful for you, for example, because you need to see how it goes.
Yeah.
Especially when you start a new project, as I can see that you're starting a bunch of new projects simultaneously.
Right. Yeah. I think it would be wonderful. I love that idea. I love it.
Cool.
Yes.
You ask Milan, who is over there, ask what his Emma would do for that. She would just jump right into it. Right, Milan?
I guess she would love to participate, definitely.
Of course.
Yeah. She's watching some children's movie, so she does.
She's
about that black sheep. If you would be taking classes at Mass Art nowadays, you would be told that it can be interpreted as a racist theme.
Exactly. Well, that's what I put it in the draw, Milan, because the editor came up with these comments, and I was like, "You're taking the meaning that saying has, and giving it this racial interpretation, which has nothing to do with it." So I'm going to now look at it, change the language. I have a friend in South End who's an artist, and he told me his children he adopted these African-American children. I said, I'm going to just ask him candidly, can you help me look at the book and see if it would be offensive? How can we change it so that it isn't?
That's very important.
Don't censor your artistic plan because it's not politically correct, because if you don't consider it a racist, so go ahead with black sheep.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that we are living in that crazy situation where everything is interpreted as offensive, etc. No, I was not trying to discourage you. Go ahead with black sheep. Why not?
I'm going ahead with it, but I'm going to change it a little bit. Like instead of, because I say that for instance, when I'm looking at the text, I see that I may have written, that the black sheep is misbehaving. It's actually not misbehaving, it's behaving differently. And there's nothing wrong with behaving differently. It just depends on how people view it. So, changing vocabulary slightly and then having another good review.
That may work. Terminological exactness sometimes works really very well. So people understand you just straightforwardly what you mean.
Yes, and because I do want to be sensitive, it is a topic that I feel needs attention, the racial relationships and how we need to equalize our society. So I am very sensitive to it, but I don't want to make mistakes writing this book, but I don't think it should be taken in that way, because a little the black sheep, the image that we have of that predates any of this racial.
Yes, it is a very complex issue. Milan is right from his point of view. And we are here, just look at our little crowd and look at our bigger crowd at Midway. We are here presenting the whole universe of different people of any color, any culture, any language, any school of thought. And I do not remember that at any point from my time of living at Midway, which is more than 10 years, we had major conflicts on that matter. Little scratches, but little scratches are happening. So if our little universe is capable of avoiding unnecessary contradiction, then it is possible. Milan is right, you are right, your friend who you are going to consult with probably will give you a very important information. And as always it happens with art makers, art maker is always finding the right path. How to go, to be true to yourself, to be true to your truth, and to be true to everyone around you, more or less.
Mhm.
More or less.
Yeah,
Please.
more or less. You can please everybody.
No, it is not about pleasing. It's about hurting.
Yeah,
We don't want to hurt anyone.
exactly. Completely in agreement. Yeah,
Because if you hurt someone, the hurt comes to you.
exactly.
You feel the hurt that you are
Yes,
source of.
yes.
So you don't want to hurt yourself.
Yeah. So yes, I'm definitely looking at the manuscript. I've had enough space to, sometimes when the comments are not the best, I'm like, okay, let me see what truth is there in these comments and how I can change the text to adapt to it.
Yeah.
At the end, I think, like I said, I cannot please everybody, but it's about being sensitive. Yes.
That is true. You know what? It just came to my mind. I'm gonna share my personal story. When I came to this country, I came to this country as a refugee from Soviet Russia, which is quite anti-Semitic, if you know. And I started living here and got very busy almost right away because I came as an artist with some resume already, and I got involved with many things. And eventually somebody asked me, how do you feel, Olga? How do you feel here in this country? What do you feel? And I thought and I said, when I walk along the street, I do not feel myself anymore as a Jew. I feel myself as Olga. It is what happens here. In this contradictory country, it is what happens. All these alternatives, all these scratches somehow produce a relatively healthy aura that we can pull from it whatever we want. If it is a benign something that we are pulling out, right? Even Milan will agree with me. Milan, do you agree with me?
I am trying to push in my art about the universal identities. My identity is a human being. That's a message from my art. So removing any kind of association with any kind of religions, race, etc. Yeah.
That's the same thing as you
So
can
I think hopefully one day in this country we will all feel like that our identities are human being, not all those millions of identities.
Yes,
you know.
yes.
So
And with everything that happens, even today, with that story, with young person, with his with the outcome of his I even forgot the name. I'm so
Oh, the trial.
Yes, the trial.
Rittenhouse.
Yes.
Rittenhouse.
Even with this story, and with the reaction to this story expressed by many people, I think that Milan's direction to become to start feeling themselves just as human beings, just as human beings. Of course, it is not possible to reach right away, and I think it is not possible to reach anyway. But the road, the direction should be taken with black little sheep as well,
Yeah.
because she's lovely. Is it
Yes,
boy or girl?
and the idea is that eventually she finds her own kind, but it refers more about her own kind in the way in thought rather than, you know, but it is represented as her type of sheep instead, but because it's for children.
Yeah, all children actually are different from the very beginning because they are smoothed with their edges and smoothed with their all their differences and promises that they bring with themselves when they are born into this world. Eventually, everything is softens. But when they are little ones, all these differences are so bright. And that's why we are saying very often that all children are talented, which is true. From my experience as a person who teaches art with children and with all other ages, people of different ages, I can tell that yes, children are very talented. Maybe the explanation here, not only that they are not afraid of anything, but because they are still not softening their differences. Each of them is so different from the other, so freshly different from the other.
That's true. But I do think there are experiences in children that sometimes are influenced by adults that can have very lasting effects. And that's something I learned, you know, through trying to get myself back in shape mentally, how that those experiences that happen early on in life, the first 7 years, 8 years of life, are so important and can have sometimes, if you have trauma, can have very lasting effects, and they're more important than other trauma that happens throughout life sometimes.
Yes, that is true.
And sometimes it is children, but I think it's how sometimes children are influenced by adults early on to be afraid, because as you said, children are very soft edges. I mean, if you let children by themselves, they don't have that viciousness or you know, preconceptions about each other. They just play. But it is when adults have taught the children to fear certain
Yes, and when they
people,
start to,
and that's influenced by adults.
yeah, that's what I also observed on Filushka, playing with kids with different races together, not seeing each other color of skin, you know, until
An
the
adult.
adult starts to teach them about racism. It's very,
And to be afraid. Yeah.
for me, I have very mixed ideas about now teaching, you know, that racial theory, you know, trying to say to develop like a guilt among white kids and victim among black kids. I am confused about that, you know. I think it's counterproductive.
And I don't think it exists. I mean, that some of these experiences of race are very unique to America, but I think in every country you have some groups that are different than the others. Sometimes it has nothing to do with race, it's the way they behave, like gypsies, right? They were thought of as dirty. It's stereotypes we create around certain groups, and in every culture you have this. this way of excluding certain individuals because they don't entirely behave like you, or because you're, I don't know. I think it's definitely influenced by adults, but you create this way of behaving that
I
is
think
not.
that original idea behind this country as a melting pot is wonderful. I am for
Me
melting
too.
pot
Yeah.
because these in the recent years that identity politics is actually sort of burying the idea of melting pot.
Yeah.
And I think it's according to my opinion, it's wrong. It's counterproductive.
Well, we are working to make it right? Right here, we are working to make it right. See, you are from your side, Miriam from her side. And at some point, your work will meet in the middle of melting pot, in the middle of that universe, and it allows you to reach that thing that I wouldn't call melting. It's probably mutual absorbency, because Miriam, like scientist, probably will imagine that penetration of different matters into each other, the way that it creates the third, not the matter, but the third kind of existence, which probably is exactly what we are trying to reach.
Yeah, I think, and for that, it's more about the melting of ideas, right? I mean, yeah.
I think that the problem was that in the past the melting was into the white pot. The soup in the pot was too white, and
not anymore.
That was not anymore. And it was considered that everything has to melt into this white, and so then that's what started the protest, because everyone wants to have their own place and they want to be like, if you look at soup, right? A
in
really
the
good
pot.
soup.
Their place in the pot.
Yeah.
In the soup. That's funny.
You know,
want to
Hannah,
keep some of your own.
You know, Hannah, that Slavs were considered still at the beginning of 20th century not being white.
Yeah,
really?
it doesn't matter.
By census.
Really?
So
It doesn't matter. Everybody sees me as white, so it doesn't matter. It's
really.
Yeah.
Everyone sees you as a white person.
Me
Hannah?
too.
Me.
I'm white. I'm also white.
Are you?
You are white as well.
Don't
No, of
go
course.
to the wrong place.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, that's very funny, really. Sometimes I feel myself like I'm all checked, in stripes, in spots, in everything. You know, like that little animal which is covered with beautiful patterns of all colors, of all shapes, of all everything. And I feel comfortable being covered with all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think we like to be recognized as who we are, but respected, of that, whatever we are.
Yep.
All right, so we will continue our coming together things, and eventually I'm sure that we will melt our ideas in something truly genius, and the world will just come to us to take a little piece of it for their benefits, right?
Yeah.
All right.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
It's
Sure.
moving in a different direction altogether than our beautiful conversation. I've not enjoyed it, I've appreciated it. That's the way I will say it. My question is for Miriam. Are you acquainted with Saul Nava in Cambridge?
No.
Okay, okay. I would like to, I'm going all the way back to the beginning of your presentation of the science and the art. So Saul Nava works in Cambridge. He teaches bioarts, he's a painter and a biologist, and he teaches at Mass Art, and he does a lot of work in Cambridge. And I saw the first parts of your presentation, and I just feel that the two of you should meet. I never know if anything will happen.
Yes, no, I love, yeah, for sure.
So I will do an email introduction with your permission and say that you are an artist I was introduced to in this talk, and you build bridges between the science and the arts. This is what he does. And he works with the Cambridge Artists Festivals and other things too. It does a lot of work in the community. Many of the, how do I want to say this? Many of the themes you were sounding in the early parts of your presentation, I know him for that work. So I just have a very simple request, and that is to create an email introduction between the two of you.
Thank
And
you.
you know, one never knows.
Exactly. I just heard today somebody say, you know, I never say no to an introduction. So yes, thank you, Jeanette. Yes,
You
of course.
never know. I listen with that ear. I love these talks because, one, I'm learning more about my community, and this is very important for me that I learn and feel more connected to my community here at Midway. But I also always listen from the ear of, who do I know? Who do I know who might be interested in the work that, or at least one thread of the work that you are doing? So thank you. I will create that introduction between the two of you. If you would, if you would please just put in the chat your email so I can copy it here.
Sure.
I will do it right away. I always do. I don't like to-do lists because I never seem to get to them. I try to,
There it is.
I try to, but they're a very,
Yeah.
to-do lists and me have a very troublesome relationship. So, so if you
And
just,
the other thing I'm gonna do is include this demo. I have my demo reel in YouTube. So if you want to share that with him, please feel free. Yes.
Perfect. I will put that too. I will copy both of those and I will put him in. Again, I have told you his name is Saul Nava. Saul Nava. Beautiful, beautiful human.
Okay, I'll look him up.
I only introduce Midway artists to beautiful human beings.
Thank you.
All of you should be clear about that. I only find connections that are with one beautiful human being to another beautiful.
Thank you, Janet. I appreciate it.
So beautifully.
Yes, thank you.
I think on that high note, we should thank our hosts because they have a lot of things to do.
Yes, thank you.
Another art salon very soon. This time it will be December 16. And after that, we will be all the end of the month on Thursday. I promise you. That is my promise. But next time it will be December 16. Thank you so very much. I truly enjoyed it. And now I'm going to continue our work downstairs in the gallery.
Oh,
because
thank you, Miriam. That was great.
Thank you,
Janet. You are a born matchmaker. You should be a professional matchmaker.
Janet?
Yes.
Of
calling.
course.
It's a
Of
little
course.
late to recognize
Yeah.
that calling. I think they missed my calling. But you know what?
This is your next calling. You can do it both at the same time.
Anna, do you know that Czech opera from Dvořák? Znám jednu dívku, ta má dukáty.
Yes.
Chalupu a chalupu dostane od táty.
It's about matchmaking. It's about
Yeah.
arranged
I
wedding.
appreciate your voice, Milan. I've never
Translation
listened
is,
to your singing.
translation is, I know a girl who is wealthy, has a big house.
That's a good
Yeah.
introduction.
That's a matchmaking under capitalism, class
Right.
divided society.
Okay.
When I came to Cambridge,
Yeah.
I was told that Cambridge girls never date, boys from Revere, where I lived. And I was like,
Oh.
why?
Oh.
Then I was
okay.
explained because they live in the different class. It was very shocking for me how this society is class related. Money,
Yeah.
positions,
That's
very
all.
wealthy.
Well, that's generalizing a bit.
I know. Not in your case, Hanichka. you
Of
you
course.
married a very poor man.
Oh, I'm very wealthy.
Oh, my goodness.
All right. All right. Han and Mario, just shut us off. I think it's
Oh,
time.
okay.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And be careful out there. Take care of yourselves. See you next time.
Be well.
Bye.
Be
Thank
well,
you,
everyone.
Miriam.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Olga.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Olga.
Bye, Milan Petra.
Ciao.
Bye, Janet. Everybody, ciao.
Bye-bye.